Are we on? Let's go.
Yes.
Welcome to another episode of the OoruLabs podcast from Bengaluru. Ever complained about how bad our cities are, how bad your commute is? You'll get to hear from people who are working to solve these problems in their own way. So, this is your soapbox for urban sustainability. Do not forget to like, subscribe, and share these videos. Check out the entire podcast library and profiles of the guests on the website podcast.oorulabs.com. I am Satya Shankaran, and with me today is Simon Alvarez Belon, who is the coordinator for the Bicycle Mayor Network for Bikes Amsterdam. PYCS is an Amsterdam based not for profit which created the Bicycle Mayor Network, and I am one of the beneficiaries of that network. It's a network of advocates for bicycling. It's a brainchild of the Bikes co founder Mort de Vries, who might join us on the show in a little while. Welcome to the show, Simon.
Thank you, Satya. Thanks so much for having me. Great to be able to speak with you today.
So one of the things we wanted to do was to demystify this whole bicycle mayor network and who the bicycle mayor is. So let's just ask that question and dive into it straight away. Who is a bicycle mayor, Simon? What does the person do?
So a bicycle mayor is a community leader, someone that's very involved in their local cycling community, whether that's through activism or leadership or whatever avenue that is. And they use cycling to benefit the city, and they help accelerate the changes by bringing citizens together, by taking action, by bringing creative solutions to the city. And they're also, importantly, I think, the people's face and voice for cycling in a city. And by connecting all of these change makers across a global network, we can help create more visibility and solutions to create the radical shift that we need to solve the crises of our cities. I think who is a bicycle mayor is a very interesting question, because there are a lot of different profiles in the network. And so the specific actions that a bicycle mayor takes are really dependent on the city's needs. And I think that's a really important and unique thing to the bicycle mayor network, that instead of providing a one-size-fits-all solution to the urban mobility challenges of a city, the bicycle mayor network empowers local leaders that have local knowledge about the particularities of a city's geography to develop creative solutions and adapt best practices from around the world to what really needs to happen in their city. So that's why I think there's such a cool and vibrant diversity of actions that have profiles in the entire network.
How big is the network, Simon? Because last I remember was at least 150 strong. I don't know how big it is now.
Yeah, right now it's around 150. It kind of oscillates. We grow quite a bit, but at the same time, of course, every 2 years, which is the standard term for a bicycle mayor, we lose some people. But right now it oscillates around 150, which is massive when you think about, this started in 2017. I know we'll get into the history of the network a little bit more later, but I think that's quite an impressive growth.
Like I said, before we jump into the history, is there a typical profile of who a bicycle mayor needs to be when you go around selecting these people? What do you look for in a bicycle mayor?
Yeah, that's a very good question. Partly it's hard to answer. I think we really pay attention to when we get an application, we really think about, okay, what does this city need? And so based on that, we look at the profile in the application. But something that I think is common is that, something that's definitely common is that bicycle mayors are really ingrained in their local cycling communities. So they have to be people that can really establish a network or already have a network within their own cities, and they can work with different stakeholders. And that's my second point, is that usually they're people that can really build bridges between initiatives that are already happening, between policymakers, between grassroots associations, because one of the reasons that the network was created is that we saw that there was a lack of communication between different bodies and groups, and especially between civil society and policymakers. And so generally we tend to look for people that can play that role. And then, like I said, I think depending on the city, we adapt. In the application form, we ask several questions, among them, what are the main barriers to your city, and what are the actions that you propose to solve them. And so looking for a strong connection between those two is really important to us.
But it did take a while for you guys to build this network, right? I mean, it's like you were mentioning, it started somewhere around 2017. How did it start? Who are the first few people, and why did you think about it this way as a network? And how long did it take to kind of get to where we are now?
Maybe I'll start answering why we started the network,
Yeah.
and then I'll
Hmm.
get into the history. So I think maybe there's four main reasons why we started the network. The first one is what I already mentioned, this gap between really important grassroots advocacy and activist work that were happening in communities and what policymakers and urban planners were seeing. We thought that there was a big silo there that had to be bridged, and the role of the bicycle mayor was one way to do it. A second aspect is that there's a lack of diversity, representation, and really consideration for the voices of vulnerable groups in cities when it comes to cycling promotion. And so one of the focuses of the network is giving a voice to more women and other vulnerable groups so that they can lead and implement solutions for them, for those groups. But also that, all bicycle mayors are aware of the importance of addressing diversity and addressing groups that are maybe less often paid attention to. That's the second reason. The third one is that a huge part of Bikes' focus is working on the human infrastructure of a city. So even though we definitely know that building a safe, separated network of bicycle infrastructure in a city and bicycle parking is really key to build a strong cycling city. It's also really important to build the human infrastructure of a city. And by that, we mean addressing the kind of more cultural and soft barriers towards cycling, like the lack of education or the lack of access to a bicycle or the lack of confidence to ride a bicycle. So these are all things that we find really important and that bicycle mayors address because they're not urban planners that necessarily always make the decisions about what bicycle lane gets built, but they can implement campaigns or they can implement projects in the local communities that really help address those soft barriers. And then finally, which I touched on before, the other reason for the network is the importance, the need for a platform of knowledge exchange that also has a sensitivity for context-specific challenges and the importance of highlighting great solutions that are being implemented in the global south. Often when it comes to the promotion of the bicycle, we have a narrow focus on what's happening in Amsterdam and in Copenhagen. Of course, there are really crucial solutions and standards for how to build a bicycle network that we should take from these places. But you can't assume that you can build an Amsterdam in Mexico City or New Delhi or in Bengaluru, for example. They're cities with very different geographies, very different challenges. And so there was a strong need for a platform that allowed for people that have that can share and communicate, okay, this is, my city struggles with this. It's got this amount of inhabitants and this is what I struggle with. Who else in the network fits that profile and what are you doing to address that? So those are the four pillars, I think, of why the Bicycle Mayor Network was born, and it really guides our work within it. As you mentioned, the Bicycle Mayor was born in 2017 with the first Bicycle Mayor being named in Amsterdam. And then the first year, I think the Bicycle Mayor Network grew to 7 bicycle mayors. And after that, it really exploded. As you know, the group of bicycle mayors in India increased incredibly rapidly. The same thing happened in Latin America. We organized a summit in India at one point, in Latin America at another point, and later in Europe. And so those are the 3 places where we're most present now. And slowly we're starting to grow in the African continent as well, and slowly in the United States. But yeah, it's been quite a journey.
Yeah, I'm surprised United States is getting bicycle mayors. I think it is cycling is this one thing that is catching up very rapidly. I can see Europe is catching up very rapidly. But what do you see in these other countries and other continents? Uh, for example, what's happening in Latin America? I am privy to some of these conversations because I attend the Bicycle Mayor Network calls and I know
Mm-hmm.
who the people are. but for the whole wide world might be listening and saying, what's going on in these other places? Because you coordinate this network, you might have some insights that will be
Yeah.
useful for people to know.
Yeah, so I think there are different challenges for cycling everywhere. Even some cities in Europe are very stuck in the car-centric paradigm that we've been living in for the last 70 years. Thankfully, the silver lining of COVID in a way is that it highlighted the incredible potential of the bicycle and
Mm.
the incredible potential of our cities when we change the rules and conditions for urban life. I think, like you mentioned, there's really incredible work happening in Latin America. There are very kind of innovative solutions that aren't being paid attention to. For example, Bogota, I think, is a reference city for the entire world, not only in their development of infrastructure, but also how they're paying attention to, for example, caregivers. They have a really great bicycle sharing system and a way that they've addressed the challenges that caregivers face when using the bicycle is that they've some of the bicycles that are part of that system now come with a child seat, or some
Mm.
of them are cargo bikes. And so a small thing like that can really change the fabric of a city's urban mobility, because all of a sudden the bicycle becomes an option to so many more people that before then were being ignored. So I think that's something great that's coming out of Bogota. Maybe something else to highlight is that they have a program in Bici a la Escuela, I think it's called, but I might be mistaken about the name. But it's basically a government organized bike bus to school. So there are fixed routes where children bike to school, accompanied by adults and
Mm.
protected from the dangers of car traffic. And that's really really amazing. As you know, there's been a big resurgence of the bike bus in Europe. It started really in Catalonia,
Mm.
which is where I'm located, and it's really great to see. But it's also amazing to see that a city like Bogota has been able to institutionalize that and make it an offering that's permanent. Yeah, those are maybe a few examples of really great things that are happening.
How do you see this uptake in Africa? I've seen a few of the bicycle mayors from there. The challenges are different in the global south, right? I mean, I would think Bogota, with its years of work around the BRT and the cyclovias and things like that, we hold them up. That's another Amsterdam from the global south, really.
Mhm.
They have done so many progressive policies. What do you think of other countries like Africa and India and such places? Do you see any traction in the Far East? Is that even
Yeah.
something that's on the radar?
Yeah, I'm happy to comment on it. Of course, I'm not the most fit person to talk about this. I'm sure people, bicycle mayors would be happy to share more about the local challenges. But I think, yeah, I mean, I think some cities in Africa face similar struggles that some cities in Europe do, which is a lack of awareness from politicians of the importance of this, and really an unequal distribution of space, right? Where
Mm.
really quite a small minority of the population owns a car, even though that percentage is increasing. But the great majority of a city's space is being given to road traffic. So I think that's a really big challenge. In terms of public transport, I think there's a very unique challenges where a lot of West African cities at least use a lot of buses and different forms of public transport that maybe you don't see as much in Europe. And there are also, yeah, unique solutions that are being brought up there. But I really think it'd be super interesting if in the future there's time to speak with someone like Emmanuel or like Sindile,
Mm.
who are doing incredible work as well. Maybe I can mention later a few examples of great projects that bicycle mayors are bringing forward. And yeah, seen both of them are doing great work.
Yeah, so I think we should jump into looking at this kind of work that the bicycle mayors are doing, and see what are some of the examples you can lay out on how bicycle mayors have been influential in some of these kind of projects in different parts of the
Yeah,
world. Of course, this, like you said, the scenarios can vary. There is more government support in some places than in others, and so be that as it may, some people, even in their situation, have been able to make a difference. What are some of the stories that
sure.
you've heard from the
Yeah,
network?
yeah, I'll share some projects maybe that are quite a highlight for
Hmm.
me. But maybe something to underline that with is that just having a bicycle mayor and being a bicycle mayor, there's a lot more than just these projects. I think a city having a voice for cycling is really important. And there's a lot of background work that happens of just,
Yeah.
talking to urban planners, talking to city officials. And that work, maybe it's less flashy than these projects that I'll mention now, but is also really, really key. But it's harder to package that, right? But maybe some examples of really great work. I mean, there are quite a few, but just to start off with Sindile, who I just mentioned, he has brought the city's stakeholders for urban mobility together in, I think, what is called the Active Travel Forum for Cape Town. And this has been really key so that there can be, in a way, a lobby for the bicycle and for micromobility, and finally have a united voice against what's really challenging sometimes to address the car-centric paradigm. Something else that he's doing is continuing the work that the former bicycle mayor of Cape Town was doing, had started, which are cycling lessons for girls and women. Because, like I said, not all kind of demographics are as invited to cycling as we think. Unfortunately, the cycling world has been really male focused, and so it's hard, I think, if you're not a man and you're not white, often to feel like you belong on a bicycle. So I think that's a really great project. The Bicycle Mayor of Barcelona, Sandra Llopart, has started this project called Rutas Seguras, which translates to safe routes. And she has created a set of safe routes around the city. Barcelona is in a really interesting moment for the bicycle, I think, because they're really doing a lot to invest in cycle lanes, and the uptake has really increased recently. But it needs another push. So we have quite an extensive cycling infrastructure network, but the connections aren't quite there. And then the cycle lanes that we do have sometimes aren't wide enough for people to feel safe on. So what she's done is connected the pieces of really great infrastructure that we have in the city, so that people who aren't as confident on a bicycle know that if they take these routes, they will be really safe. And so if you want to practice for the first time riding around a city, or if you're a parent and you want to take your kids cycling and have them experience what it's like to own the city and to experience the city on two wheels, they can use these different safe cycling routes. So I think that's a really, really simple but also beautiful project where you're addressing the soft barriers and cultural barriers of a city, and really building the human infrastructure of cycling for a city, as I mentioned before. I think another highlight, which of course you're super familiar with, Satya, is Relief Riders during COVID, which was a project that you're incredibly involved in, and how that was scaled throughout India was really, really magical to see. How the bicycle was used in a time of crisis to deliver essential supplies to the people that needed them, and how through the Bicycle Mayor Network, we were able to take a local solution that worked in certain contexts and spread it around the different cities where that was also appropriate. So that's definitely a highlight. And maybe if I'm missing some details, you fill them in, because I think that was definitely a highlight of the Bicycle Mayor Network. And during the dark times of COVID, it was a very uplifting story.
That was quite interesting for us to collaborate as well. And a lot of bicycle mayors did step in and try to do their best. And it was one of a kind that we all participated in. A wonderful effort. I'll put some links in the show notes for people to go and read up a little more. The Ruta Securitas is something that is very interesting for me, because I'm trying to do something similar here, is build a network of cycle friendly roads, because the infrastructure is hard to come by. With political will still kind of lagging the kind of change that is required. These shortcuts that people take, the back roads, the narrow lanes that we can use in the meanwhile, is something that we are trying to map and say, hey, look, there are these streets. You may not be familiar with them if you're going into that area, but here's a handy map. So we're trying to put that together as well. That's a beautiful idea that resonates with some of these things.
Maybe just to mention quickly, I should definitely connect you with Spiros as well, the Bicycle Mayor Network, Bicycle Mayor of Athens. He's done something very similar. Sandra's project focuses more on actual bicycle infrastructure that already exists.
Okay.
Spiros in Athens is focused on exactly what you mentioned, which are small streets and back alleys, which if you, according to him, if you know them well, if you've got the right knowledge, you can
Mm,
cycle through Athens and feel relatively safe because these streets have very low car traffic.
mm.
But if no one tells you, you don't know how to get around from one point to the next. And so he's created, again, a set of routes and posted them on YouTube of teaching people how you can use this hidden cycling infrastructure, if
Yeah.
I may.
That came about because our ability to think outside the car is just coming out, right? So you're used to a route going in a motor vehicle, and then when you switch to a bicycle, you tend to mimic that route instead of trying to find other ways because you just been going that way, and
Yeah.
you don't know the narrow routes. You might get stuck somewhere. You don't know if it is safe, it's not. So it's useful to map what people use and then try and use that. So I'll put a link to that we're building as well. But coming back to when you said you do look for certain traits in bicycle mayors, but cycling itself is such a wide thing, right? I mean, we talked about Contador and your exploits. You could be a Pogacar or Cavendish or anything. That's the recreational part of things, which most people are attracted to because it's nice and it's fun to do as well. The boring part is transforming the city and your commute, which has all these challenges of I have traffic, I feel unsafe, and all of these things. With this wide variety of expertise that people come from into the Bicycle Mayor network, how do you reconcile their ability to transform cities, or do you not attempt to do that, or do you guide people into saying the cities still need to transform, and it's not enough if you just keep doing the recreational rides? It's good fun thing to do. I do that as well, you do that.
Mhm.
But how do you then transform cities? How do we reconcile those in the Bicycle Mayor network? What are your stories you've heard around that?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. In general, when we look for bicycle mayors, we really do tend to focus on people that what they want to work on is that city and urban transformation, right? I think, like you mentioned, a lot of people who are doing that also on the side enjoy, spending the weekend on two wheels and going on a road ride or enjoying the mountains or nature. But really, when we look for people, we make sure that the focus is transforming a city so that everyone can use the bicycle in their day to day. Because at the end of the day, that's really what's going to have a very transformational effect on the climate, on a city's economy, on a city's, all these other benefits that the bicycle brings. But at the same time, I do think that recreational cycling, depending on where you are, can be a really good way in for to make cycling
Mm,
attractive to people. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I do think India is one of those places where people really see the benefits of health of cycling as a really important way to promote this mode of transport. And so I think it's important to toggle that line a little bit. I think, and make sure that you're creating a culture for people to feel more invited to get onto wheels and experience the benefit of cycling, whether that's health or mental health or whatever that may be, and at the same time um, taking the necessary steps so that the city can leverage that new interest in the bicycle to transform the daily life of so many people, right? So yes, I think walking that line is really, really important.
how do you leverage the benefits of the network for each one? How do they participate? What are some of the things you guys have put together for people to converse and understand what are the best practices going on around? You talked about a bunch of people. How often do they meet? Where do you get to meet? I participated in a couple of the conferences you mentioned. I was there in Mexico City and I was there
Mm-hmm.
at the Velocity as well. Beyond that, do you have regular stuff that you create as a part of the network?
Yeah, definitely. There's four pillars of how we support bicycle mayors, and I'll go into each of them briefly. But so the first one would be networking, which is really, really important, right? We facilitate networking mainly through regional calls, which are monthly or bi-monthly calls with bicycle mayors from each of the different regions around the world. And in these, there are two main things that we do. One is just general best practice exchange where we open the floor and let bicycle mayors share the work that they're doing, ask questions, ask for feedback from other bicycle mayors on that work. So that's one way. And then the other thing that we do is we also invite external speakers to speak about their expertise, and that way we can help capacitate bicycle mayors. So that's kind of one of the pillars. Another one is capacity building, which, like I mentioned, regional calls kind of fits into that. But we also have a resource hub with 150 plus resources and guides of best practices that sometimes are hard to find, or it's not easy to have all that information in one place.
Mm.
So we've gone in and done our best to put that together and consolidate it. Um, and we also have a monthly newsletter where we share opportunities and best practices and highlights from the network. And that's a way to provide more resources to bicycle mayors. And then finally, we also offer kind of individual consulting or individual help. We're always available, myself and the rest of the Bicycle Mayor Network team, when a bicycle mayor is facing certain challenges, and we help them one-on-one. Another avenue is that another way we support bicycle mayors by adding legitimacy to the work that they do, just by being part of the Bicycle Mayor Network community and network. You're joining a platform of legitimized change makers, right? And that really helps a lot of people when they join. When they join the Bicycle Mayor Network, a lot of doors open up for them, whether that's conversations with urban planners or local government or different organizations. They have a foot in the door, and that's really, really important for their work. And that's why we're also very careful when we select bicycle mayors, because we know that there's a certain respect and reputation that comes with being a bicycle mayor. So we ensure that the people that we invite to be bicycle mayors are really high quality and can step up to those challenges and represent the network very well. And then finally, there's also we also have our own bikes programs and projects, and sometimes we facilitate those through the network and offer them as kind of blueprints that bicycle mayors can take. And if we can find funding, we run them in different cities around the world.
Legitimacy does bring this question because we do interact with the government quite a bit. And while we introduce ourselves as a bicycle mayor, people are, it goes back to the first question I asked about who is the bicycle mayor. How do people represent themselves? How do governments see this? Is there any backlash you've seen? Do governments feel that this is not a position that is legitimate? What is the legitimacy that we can claim to have?
Yeah, I think it's important to highlight, and we always stress this when we're running a bicycle mayor campaign or we're working with a city, is that the bicycle mayor is a symbolic role, right? We don't claim that the bicycle mayor is an official position for the city. It's not tied to government, and so stressing that is very important. In general, people are very receptive to the role, I think, because they see and understand that the bicycle mayor is an asset for them in helping them build the bridges that need to be built to carry out a transformation as major as they need to. And also they're a great source of knowledge of what does the cycling community want, what does the cycling community need, what is happening on the ground, which sometimes it's hard to be in touch with that. So overall, I think cities really see them as an asset and are very appreciative of the role. And we have cities now, we're at a place where cities directly come to us. We have a link on our website, which maybe you can also put in the footnotes, where you can fill out a form if you want a bicycle mayor in your city and you want us to help you find one. And so we have cities coming to us now. It's also true that sometimes when people don't understand perfectly what the role of a bicycle mayor is, they can feel threatened. Sometimes the name bicycle mayor, depending on the city and on the country, sometimes the word mayor can be triggering to people, which is why we do our best to stress again that it's not an official position, and that being a bicycle mayor, what it means is being part of the bikes network and nothing else. But once we clarify that, cities are appreciative, and we hope to move more in that in a direction where not only do cities see bicycle mayors as important assets, but they see them as key players in the work that they do to transform a city's transformation, to transform the city's mobility, And they can depend on bicycle mayors to implement projects, to collect data, and really be, again, a key actor in that mix of important stakeholders that you have to mobilize.
No, I've seen that personally. It is, like you said in the very beginning, a voice to cycling is something that was missing in most places, right? So if somebody needed to know what's going on in the cycling ecosystem, they need somebody who can speak to that. And they gravitate towards someone with a title or anybody even close to. Otherwise they have to hunt around different clubs and groups and gather all these things. It's convenient for them. Pick up the phone, call the bicycle mayor. He might know something. right?
Yeah.
And it's usually helpful to kind of not necessarily call yourself a spokesperson for all cyclists. I try to steer clear because I have my niche and can't do everything for everyone. But wherever you can, try and provide the voice that is required and catalyze some programs like you said, like the relief riders or whatever it was. If you can think
Mm.
of something that can bring people together, nothing like it. While the government does interact, there is also the press and media who also come and ask questions and things like that. How do you then how do you measure outcomes? Because human infrastructure is not necessarily an easy thing to measure. It's about mindsets, it's about social change, it's about how the city is moving, how you're creating a culture, how you're using the voice to bring and gravitate attention towards cycling. And is that leading to something? How do you even measure these kind of things? What kind of measures do you think are even valid to apply?
Yeah, I think that's a very good question. The term or the concept of human infrastructure isn't that old, and we ourselves are still working on how do we measure that exactly. That's something that's ongoing within bikes. But something that we always work on, and we ask bicycle mayors actually in the application, is to create a set of criteria that they're going to judge their own work on. So in the application, as I mentioned, they speak about the challenges that their city has, their solutions, and then the next question is, okay, how are you going to base your success on those solutions? And that's a really, really important point because it's key that these measures are specific and that they're actually measurable. You can't just say, oh, I hope that there are more cyclists 2 years from now. Okay, but how many cyclists do you want to have? What's realistic given the situation that your city is in? And how are you going to achieve that, right? So get even more specific of, okay, I want 200 more cyclists in a year, but I also want, I don't know, 500 people in total to have attended my critical mass, for example.
Mhm.
So that's a kind of stepping stone to achieving that goal. My work over the last 2 years has also focused on measuring the success of the Bicycle Mayor Network as a whole. And yeah, that's been a really interesting process and really great. I think we're getting a lot better at that and judging how much activity there is in the network, which is really important. And so now we have set criteria, set metrics, so that we can tell, okay, the month of June, how active has the network been? How many projects have been carried out? What do we need to do to activate the network more, to help bicycle mayors in something? So that's been a really interesting process, but it's been immensely helpful to have that data and be able to really look at hard numbers and say, okay, this is what we're doing right, and this is what we're not.
But I guess having a bunch of change makers and getting some activities and the discipline of doing some programs is a good enough start to say, while it is harder to measure outcomes, the outputs can definitely help speed this along. And a bunch of activities on a continued basis, or even a niche program that can continue to hold fort, and you can continue to run certain things instead of just smaller pieces, would definitely be user. Kind of trying to understand, where do you see the bicycle mayor network going from here, right? I mean, it's a very useful tool. It's gone this far. It's achieved some outcomes. So let's start with, actually, why don't we say, before it grows into, what do you think is, of course, other than the projects you said, what do you think is the key highlight of this network of 150 strong people, plus or minus? And then kind of use that as a leverage to tell me, where do you see this growing into? Is it in numbers? Are we looking at 300? Is that what is going to do, or is 150 going to be more effective, and can we see changes? How do you see this impact measurement from your side?
In terms of kind of moments that have been highlights over the last 6-7 years,
Mm,
I think that there's a lot to choose from. The summits were definitely moments where we saw a lot of action coming out of them and a lot of motivation. And so those were really, really inspiring. And we hope to be able to organize those more. There are also, as you mentioned, milestones of growth. When we reached 100 bicycle mayors, 150 bicycle mayors, that was really special. But I think something that was also really great is when during COVID, we were able to put out as a network a united call
mm,
for a certain amount of measures that promoted the bicycle in that moment of crisis. And I think having such a global and at the same time united voice for the bicycle is really unique of the Bicycle Mayor Network. And so that is an example of the power of creating a platform like this. So that's definitely a highlight. in terms of how we measure our success going forward and where we're going, growth is important for sure. And we want to have bicycle mayors in more cities. And there's also specific cities where we're like, wow, we could really have a lot of impact here. But I don't think it's the key. It's the key goal. I think, like I mentioned before, having helping bicycle mayors have an even closer relationship with their local government is really, really important. Because when there's buy-in from the city, and we've seen that in certain bicycle mayor offices in certain cities where that has occurred, when that buy-in is there, the impact that a bicycle mayor can have is incredible. And sometimes it takes time to build that trust and build that legitimacy, which is why we find why we sometimes prioritize quality over growth. So, for example, instead of aiming to grow in 50 more cities over the next few months, it's more important to us that in the cities where we have had a bicycle mayor before and there's a term ending, there's someone that's going to take over after. Because when we've seen that when there are several bicycle mayors that come one after another, the networks and the relationships that are built are so key and really make kind of the life, the experience of the next bicycle mayor so much easier. Just as an example, the new bicycle mayor of Lima in Peru, Nilton, he took over from Javier Flores, who did an incredible job at making the bicycle mayor role part of the cycling advocacy ecosystem of the city. And so when Nilton entered the position, he already had the buy-in from the local transport agency and the local whatever organization, and so he didn't have to spend the first 6 months of his tenure building those relationships because they were already there. So that's definitely a priority. And then I think the last thing to add is that we see the Bicycle Mayor Network as this incredible platform for, like I said, best practice, but also for data extraction. So really trying what works in different cities. So having the Bicycle Mayor be a platform where we can launch pilots in different cities and see, okay, what has worked here, what hasn't worked here, and really use that as a way to inform cities, organizations, build best practices, build toolkits through the work that so many people are doing. So that's a next step. I think that requires us to find more resources and really build a methodology around that. But that's what we have our eyes set on.
What do you think a bicycle mayor needs to have minimally to consider himself or herself suitable for this role so that they are set up for success and not have to struggle after?
I think that's a really good question. Maybe I'm going to start with a bit more of a positive response, because more often than not, we have, instead of having too many people apply, we have people that should apply not applying because maybe they're a bit shy. And so the first thing I'll say is that it's a really inspiring, beautiful platform where beyond all the important work that we've mentioned that we do, it's also a place of solidarity, right? Where people who have the same mission help each other out, cheer each other on. And sometimes it's not easy to fight this fight and constantly be struggling against, the car-centric paradigm and politicians that aren't always the most open to these suggestions. And so having a group of 140, 150 plus bicycle mayors that are cheering you on and going through the same things is really, really important. So I'll say that. To answer your question, I think a key thing, which I mentioned before, is being someone that is well integrated in the local cycling community and also having some experience leading that cycling community, whether that's organizing events or bringing people together. I think it's important that people have some experience already doing the work, and it's not that they see the bicycle mayor position as, okay, I'm interested in promoting the bicycle and this is how I'm going to do it for the first time. We look for people that have some experience doing that. And then I guess another thing is people that have some time availability. In general, we're very aware that one, this is a volunteer position, and two, people are really busy. There are some people where their profession is promoting the bicycle, whether they have they have an organization that they work for, and that's what pays the bills. But there's also a lot of people where they do this on the side. So we're very aware that there's a time limit, but I think it's important that you have some time. And we estimate between 4 and 8 hours a week. And I think that really varies, but having some time that you can dedicate regularly to initiating projects or maybe joining regional calls is important for the bicycle mayors themselves to get the most out of the experience. But I really, really encourage people to reach out if they have these questions and if they have these doubts. Me and the rest of the team are always super happy to chat with people and see whether this is a right fit. And if it's not, we also have what we call the Bicycle Citizens Network, which is a kind of, it's a network for people who maybe don't have as much experience or don't have as much time, but still want to be involved in some way. And what we do with them is sometimes we give them assets that they can share on social media. And oftentimes we also connect the bicycle citizens that are in cities where bicycle mayors exist. We connect them so that they can collaborate, right? And maybe, who knows, maybe a bicycle citizen that is working with a bicycle mayor gets enough experience that 2 years down the line, they become the next bicycle mayor, which is really great.
So the bicycle mayor position for Bengaluru is always open. Please feel free to apply if you're up for it. Most of the cities, I think they should just apply. The interest is, like you said, is the first thing, and a little bit of time availability is all it is. Shouldn't be more complicated than that. The fact that you can think about transforming your city is good enough, and you can start small and take inspiration from the network and go forward. The most important question I have is, why did you cycle 500 kilometers this past week?
I cycled 500 kilometers with a friend actually from Utrecht in the Netherlands to Paris. It's part of a solidarity project called Thighs of Steel. And by cycling long distances, we fundraise for people who are displaced or are seeking asylum in Europe and face massive challenges, whether that's legal challenges or otherwise. And so by fundraising, by cycling really long distances, we hope to inspire people to donate and also shed a light on this really important cause. And so we thought that, what a more beautiful way to fundraise than by cycling a really, really long distance. It was definitely a very crazy trip, but it was very hard, but it was really, really fulfilling as well, especially because we had a whole community around it. And we had bicycle mayors cheering us on and loads of people taking part, which was really nice.
Yeah, I was watching for the pictures. I hope you chose a flat route and didn't have to climb the Alps or something. So
No, thankfully we just missed them.
just missed them. That's very inspirational. A lot of the bicycle mayors I've seen do inspirational stuff, and I am personally inspired by a lot of people who've been doing varying things. Of course, I put my head down and doing my own stuff here, but just I do catch up on a lot of the happenings around and through the network stories and having participated. The Bicycle Mayor Network program has been transformational, and I can vouch for the fact that if you put your mind to it, the platform is an exceptional way to scale transformation. But I would like you to look ahead, knowing what the bicycle mayors are doing and how their cities are. What do you see as the future of cycling? I mean, positively, yes, we need it. We are all chasing it. It needs to be the urban transformation tool, and we can see that it is. And but practically, what are these trajectories? The Bogotas of the world, the Cape Towns of the world, the Bengalurus of the world. They are all traveling at different speeds. Where do you see these things, and how far ahead of work do we have in promoting cycling? Not promoting cycling, making cycling politically at least not a barrier.
Yeah, I think we've got our work cut out for us. Like I mentioned, I think there's been a huge boom in the last few years, and we have to leverage that and continue that momentum. I think international organizations have a big role to play in influencing local politics and making cycling not an apolitical issue in a way. It is a political issue in that it has huge importance for people's daily lives. But what I mean by apolitical is that it's an obvious choice for any politician, no matter what party you belong to. And I think also there's another side of that, which is capacitating people to bring about these changes. I was reading this morning that there's a new initiative to capacitate 10,000 bicycle urban planners. I'm not sure if it's globally or in Europe or what the demographic is, but yeah, I think that's where we need to head to. And I hope that the Bogotas of the world can help the Cape Towns of the world, or can help other cities, and that's partly what we're trying to do with the Bicycle Mayor Network, right? Make sure that those lessons are taken elsewhere, and that's maybe another reason for people to want to join the network, or for cities to want to have a bicycle mayor, is that not you open the channel to both receive but also give to the world, the things that are being done right, where you are.
On that wonderful note, thanks, Simon, for coming on the show and giving us a nice overview of the Bicycle Mayor program. I think we should take this opportunity to call out to many people across the countries and wherever else they are who are interested in transforming their cities using the bicycle as a tool for transportation, get us towards a better future. I think this platform of the Bicycle Mayor Network is one powerful tool. I have personally been a beneficiary of leveraging the network, leveraging the platform, and being able to do things that impact lives. And hopefully, people can come in with an open mind and be willing to learn, network, and enrich themselves and the network in the bargain, because you need to give to the network also when you try to take something from the network. And it's important to see how we can add value as well. Take this opportunity to ask people to like, subscribe, and share these videos. And thanks a bunch, Simon. Looking forward to talking more with you and hearing of your exploits. What next after 500 kilometers?
Well, first off, thanks so much, Satya, for having me. It was a real pleasure talking with you, and it's always also a real pleasure seeing the great work that you do as Bicycle Mayor of Bengaluru. In terms of next exploits or adventures cycling, later in July, I'll be doing a trip in the Basque country, which I'm really looking forward to. I think
Beautiful.
it'll be beautiful. It might be a bit too warm, so I'll have to bring a lot of water with me. But yeah, really, really looking forward to that.
All right, guys. Thanks for watching the show and see you all next week.
Thank you for having me.
Bye.